Hey, welcome to an all new episode of Talking American Gods. I am your host, Jen, broadcasting from the beautiful sunny island of Maui today. And I am joined by two awesome co hosts. One, we have Yardley. Yardley, how's everything?
Everything's going good. It's Avengers Endgame weekend, and I'm excited to talk about Donar the Great.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, Avengers. Oh boy, boy. Talk about American gods. I feel like the entire Marvel world is basically a brand new mythology pantheon. In another 100 years, they'll be thinking we were worshiping Thor
Uh,
from the movies.
yeah, I mean, well, actually, this weekend not only holds Avengers Endgame, but also the highly anticipated episode 3 of Game of Thrones, the Battle for Winterfell. So it's gonna be a pretty good weekend for TV and movies.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's actually, boy, Yardley, you should definitely come and podcast with us sometime about Game of Thrones. It's actually pretty interesting. Okay, so my second co-host, or my what's a better word for co-host? My other partner in crime is Kinte. Kinte, how's everything?
Everything is great. Looking forward to, of course, episode 3 of Game of Thrones. That's going to be a lot of fun. I think something's going to happen this episode. I have my fingers crossed. And also, in game too. Isn't that interesting how they both fall on the same weekend?
It's awesome. I'm going tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
But I have a question. I'm going to ask this to Yardley. Of I know this isn't the Avengers Endgame podcast, but just do you think the Avengers / Marvel movies make for great date movies?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. If the other person isn't really opposed to that type of content, I don't see how it wouldn't be. Look, at this point in the game, lots of times if you just go out on any type of date, people appreciate it. And plus, and especially like if you're the one dropping the bag, it's almost like it's a freebie. If you didn't like it, then you're right where you started.
I agree.
And and let's not forget, lest it be overshadowed here. Sunday is also the finale for American Gods. This is it for this season. So while we know that they're coming back for another season, this season will end with whatever it ends with on Sunday.
Yeah, it'll be good to kind of do an overview of everything that we saw because we know that going into season 3, they're going to have a different show run.
Yeah, and it brings to light something a bit interesting that I know we talked about at the very beginning of the podcast when season 2 first began, which was how fast are they keeping pace with the book, and could they tell the whole rest of the story in 8 episodes? And I think the answer was a resounding, well, they could have, and yet they didn't. They chose to go off in a couple of different directions, and two of those directions, I think, tonight are things that we should talk about because they really are very different from sort of the book universe of American Gods. And yet, in some ways, they worked fairly well. So I do want to start. Well, okay, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Everybody, if you haven't watched this last episode of American Gods, please either turn away or don't complain. Mad Sweeney, of course, dies. And I want to start out with that because I want to put into context what happened this episode with what happened last episode, which was Donar the Great. Donar the Great was the son of Odin. For all intents and purposes, he was, I feel like, just such a lost kind of a soul in America, far less than the Thor of strength and power that we know, but strong in different ways. So with that, we have a whole episode that's sort of a past and a present flashback, flash forward, just some interesting narrative pieces that go along with that. But the interesting thing to me about the way that they did these back-to-back episodes was we have a lot of context now for Mr. Wednesday and how Mr. Wednesday is truly just a miserable person. I mean, as a god, he's just awful. I mean, he's not getting Parent of the Year award. He's an awful person when it comes to how he treats quite a few people, but specifically Mad Sweeney. And we've kind of seen that as the series has progressed. And I want to take a pause and say that neither Donar the Great in the detail that we have in the book, in the series, or Mad Sweeney was really included in the book to any great length. Mad Sweeney had a couple of small scenes in the book. He basically died after begging Shadow for the coin back. And, Shadow obviously said, no, I don't have it anymore. It was nothing. It was really nothing. In this episode, we have something fairly epic happening with Mad Sweeney. But again, I just want to sort of say that if you didn't like Donar the Great, go back and really watch it again, because it's interesting the way as a character instead of
we lost you, Jen.
like it's just more of the American Gods piece that just talks about backstory and for no reason, and there actually I think is a really good reason. So I'm going to start with you, Yardley.
Can I say real quick?
Yeah.
Real quick. So I was spoiled to what was going to happen to Mad Sweeney, and this is how I was spoiled. Now I didn't get that far in the book, but so I'm setting up the rest of the episodes, right? Like putting in the information, right? So I'm putting on Facebook events that we're going to be covering, the finale. So I read the synopsis of the finale. Now this was like 3 weeks ago. The synopsis of the finale says, in the aftermath of Sweeney's death, Wednesday has disappeared. I'm like, wow. I'm like, thanks. Spoiling your own show.
Oh, that's sad.
I'm like, yeah. So I actually knew he was gonna die like about 3 weeks ago, because it says it in the freaking thing. What do you call it? The synopsis.
The episode guides. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah. So sorry about that. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, we'll make you a chocolate chip cookie and give you some ice cream for that, because that is really sad, actually. No, honestly, I hate that too. That's really bad. So actually, you know what? I'm going to start with you first, Kinte. Sorry, Yardley. I'm going to ask you a quick question. So tell me, first of all, I know Donar the Great was not an awesome episode, but let me, in this episode, in Treasure of the Sun, did your opinions of Mr. Wednesday change at all? Or did you still feel like he is basically the same character on the same track? We just have a little bit more color to him.
Yeah, he's the same. I mean, nothing has changed the way I view him. I mean, who's surprised by anything with Mr. Wednesday?
I have to say, well, let me get Yardley's opinion first. Yardley, what did you think?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like he's been the same character. I just think that we're just learning a little bit more about him. I've just never felt like... I feel like he's the type of person that lies telling the truth. You know what I mean? So I don't really feel like there's any difference, honestly. So I'm more interested probably to hear your take.
Think about it. His name is a lie. So his very name is a lie.
I'm a little concerned, just from a narrative perspective, that what they have now done is sort of set up Mr. Wednesday to seem like he has so much more than what I think he really has, which doesn't mean that he's not. I guess what I'm saying is, in comparison to Mr. World, Mr. Wednesday feels like he doesn't have as much power. Like in some ways, it almost feels like, well, he needs all the rest of the gods. Mr. World is so powerful that how could Mr. Wednesday even stand a chance? And yet at the same time, I also think that Mr. Wednesday in the series right now is making or has made an incalculable mistake by under appreciating the people around him. And the death of Mad Sweeney to me feels like that very episodic moment in his character arc where Shadow sees nobody matters to Mr. Wednesday. The war matters, nothing else.
I can agree with that. I definitely can agree with that, especially at the end of the episode, because I think the sequence went, they were fighting over the spear. I think Shadow went to one knee to like grab it or something, and then it ends up impaling Mad Sweeney. But when you look at Shadow after that happens, I think the directors were purposefully kind of going from the expression on his face back to Mr. Wednesday. So I do think that he did open himself up to potentially make Shadow a little bit more apprehensive about backing him. But the way Shadow has been written for the show, he's gonna, kind of dodo his way around behind Wednesday regardless. I will say the death of Mad Sweeney does make a lot of people or force other people to kind of rework their theories about what's going on, especially with Laura Moon.
Yeah. Which is also, I feel like, one of the most interesting aspects of the Mad Sweeney piece. There is and I thought it too. In fact, I absolutely believed that the 2 drops of blood infused with love was all about Mad
really?
Sweeney.
Huh.
Yeah.
I was thinking something.
Now I feel like that was a red
I was
herring.
thinking that at the end of the day, when we met Laura Moon, she didn't know who she was and love herself. I think she's going to end up, the blood is going to be hers that she drops in that cup, because I think once she finds out who she is and finds out that she loves herself and that she has some worth, and as the god, the one from New Orleans, what was his name? The one that she had sex with, that led to the Bushmaster. Bushmaster down in New Orleans. So I just kind of feel like once she finds her self-worth, I think it'll be her that'll have the blood that will help her, with the potion. But I'll probably be horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So let me throw this out here to both of you guys then. Do you think that Laura Moon is a god at this point? Do you think that that's where she's going?
I don't.
No? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think she is at all.
But it's kind of hard with where we ended up going into the last episode of this season with where her character's at. I don't know what they're going to do with her next week, of course, but it's just, I don't know, because it's such a curveball, because now you're really like, what is she going to do? Because based off of the plot that they have laid out for her so far, on one hand, you're like, well, is she going to get the drops of blood from Shadow? But we know that Shadow that isn't really feeling her like that anymore. I personally don't think that he loves her based off of what we've seen in the show up to this point. So I don't, and then like you, Jen, I could totally have saw the situation where it would be Mad Sweeney, because it totally seemed like that was the direction. I mean, I know I'm not crazy and y'all aren't crazy, and I don't think anybody who's watching the show is crazy enough to not have thought that that's where they were leading to, you know what I mean? So I'm just confused now. Like, I really feel like going into season 3, I shouldn't have any expectations of how I feel about, what direction it's going to go, because it could totally be something different next season.
Well, just as a point of sort of production notes, and I have to interject this. I'm sorry, I didn't say his name, but he's the Baron. Remember the voodoo doctor is the Baron.
Yes.
Samedi. Okay, so anyway, just because oftentimes I hear people say, especially my little circle, "Hey, how come you never say any characters' names? Don't you know them?" No, I do, honestly, I promise. Okay, so this is just from a production standpoint, right? I feel like this season was, and the reason that it was not disorganized, but organized differently than season one, and in terms of how to narratively bridge everything all together, is because of the sort of chaos behind the scenes with transitioning showrunners and transitioning writers, and how to sort of tell the story in a way did that honored the actual story itself, but didn't throw everything into a chaotic element without getting some story told. That said, I will say that after a hiatus this long, I expected more. I love the show, I do, but I expected a lot more for where we are than where we are. And each individual story, as seen by itself episodically, is wonderful, powerful, amazing, beautifully written in some cases. But put all together, the tapestry of American Gods in season two falls so far short of the tapestry in season one that it doesn't even feel like we are connected to the same cloth.
Yeah.
And it's a little
It
disappointing.
is. It is, Jen. It's
You
like
know?
having a quilt made and like it's half Star Wars and half like Cleveland Browns logo. Yeah. You're like, I don't know how the hell you're putting this together, but yeah, it does. I mean, but
Which
really,
doesn't,
real quickly, if there's any content that really needs consistency from the same people working on it, it's this show.
it is, and what I was going to interject is that the concept material of American Gods is not easy to tell. So everyone gets full props for attempting to bring this kind of it's a bit esoteric. The material feels esoteric in some ways. It's hard to tell this kind of story. It's not high fantasy. You don't have license to sort of just do whatever you want in the physical world. Things have to line up and have to make some sense, and yet at the same time you're dealing with beings that basically can break every single rule of reality and physics that we have. And so to that end, it becomes, I guess, a bit of a proposition to get it told. But I will say that the first season of American Gods did such a brilliant job of making the surreal feel like part of reality. And in this series, or this season, it feels like we are trying to adapt the surreal to a Monopoly game, something so mundane that it just doesn't quite work. There is something just missing below the surface. I didn't want to veer too far into that, but I really feel like for where we are in our journey in the series, it's just, I have high hopes for season 3, but I really am disappointed with season 2. I hope that they pull back a little bit of magic that they had at the beginning and really study what went right in season 1 and compare it to what was, because standing by itself, season 2 is not bad. It's just that each individual episode almost needs to stand by itself as a little sort of vignette of something. And it doesn't have the kind of cohesion that I feel like season 1 had, where they were telling us tons of narrative that was disconnected from the story. And yet it felt so much more connected to the story. I hope that makes some kind of sense. I know it's a little bit back and forth, but it's just it was such a huge.
It makes a lot of
so.
sense, and also in the show, it just seems like they'll bring up certain things and they don't pay it off by kind of intertwining some type of a message. Like they have different social messages in this. We all know this, but it's one thing to have a message, but how does that message kind of intertwine with the regular story? And I just feel like some of the things that they bring up, and there's just never a payoff, and you don't really understand what that has to do with the rest of the episode.
Can
You know what underscores that the most to me? In this past episode, Treasure of the Sun, where they are in the atrium and Odin basically has called a meeting, and all of the gods who are around the table, so to speak, and Mad Sweeney hasn't been invited. And none of the gods speak up, say anything, do anything, mention it. And yet we are led to believe that somehow behind the scenes we have Mr. Nancy, Bilquist, Mr. Ebis, and Jackal someplace, all wanting to band together to fight for the good fight. And yet they are, in the name of intolerance and all of the racial stuff that we have seen so far. And don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing the two. I'm saying that it stands in stark contrast that even if the gods are fickle as heck, it doesn't make any sense to me that nobody stood up and said, this is just wrong. There's something wrong going on here. What are we going to do? And again, it would have taken 2 lines of dialogue to convey that with some kind of conviction, and it would have been great. But instead, the gods walk away from that table feeling like they are lackluster slaves of Mr. Wednesday. It just it really rubbed me the wrong way. Those are some great points.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
So, okay. So let's go back to...
I haven't been reading a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, but I'm really interested to see, what does Neil Gaiman feel about this second season? I can't imagine he can't love it.
Boy, I haven't actually read anything about his take on season 2, not in a hot minute, not since the season 2 base really started. So I don't know. I would like to think that his involvement, because we know he was involved, that his involvement was, again, a bit of a bridging function between season 1 and what we know is going to happen in season 3. Season 3 is going to be the war. I mean, that for all intents and purposes, I feel like we now, gone through our middle of the road segment, and we no longer need to sort of figure out who these people are. All the players are in place. But it's weird to me that Neil Gaiman, who would be involved in this season, wouldn't see the fact that this is really disconnected storytelling.
Yeah. Or maybe he's just like, you know what? I'm going to just take this check and be quiet. Like.
He checked out because of Good Omens? Because I think he's committed to that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it in the least. It definitely feels to me like there is some interesting things happening on the Neil Gaiman side that American Gods just wasn't one of them. And it doesn't mean that it wasn't successful. I think that this was a very successful opportunity for a lot of people. But you know who really dropped this? The people that really dropped this was Stars. They're the ones that, for whatever reason, sorry guys, I love all your material, but in this one case, it's so clear that this show needed both more money and the talent behind it to make this work. I mean, half committing to it feels like, why?
That's true.
That's why you got to give credit to great adapters and great networks like HBO and Netflix and some of these other ones. Not to say that Stars hasn't done a great job on, Black Sails was good, and there's some other shows that they've adapted. Well, I guess Black Sails wasn't really truly adapted, but it's really hard to take, especially that kind of material, just from reading it and adapt it and make it into something that you could, because I don't think when he wrote the book, this is me thinking, he didn't write it as some writers nowadays will think of it possibly being a movie down the line.
No.
So, yeah. So it's pretty evident when you read it that he didn't, it was just he was writing a novel, right? So, it's not the easiest material to adapt. And then when you don't have stars really getting behind it financially, which I don't even see why they wouldn't. I mean, there's everything there for a big hit, and they really there is no money behind it. It is very, how many people even know it's on really? And here's the thing about American Gods: when people watch it, they love it.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of people who are not like huge fans like us who do podcasts and read all the stuff, and they just kind of casually watch it, and they're like, man, this season 2 is great. I'm like, wow. I was pretty like, wow, you're liking the season 2? Oh, okay. They just I was shocked how much people, when they watch the show, they actually really, really like it. Not because I don't like it, or not because maybe I just lost faith in humanity. So when I saw the first couple of episodes, I thought to myself, the way how dumb the public is, they're not going to like it. So I was surprised that people really were into it, but they don't promote it. I don't see. What's his name? And this is a sidetrack, and we'll get back on the episode. Ian McShane was on the week before. I think he was on Seth Meyers or something, and they spent the whole time talking about Deadwood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? So and then what's his name? Ricky Riddle. You should have that guy out there. When he talks, he's very engaging, right? And he's a good personality and all of that kind of stuff. And I can see people wanting to see a show that he's on. You know what I mean? And I don't know why they're not getting more. And it's Neil Gaiman. You know what I'm saying? So I don't get it why they decided not to promote it like they should. But it's going to be one of those shows to me that on Netflix or whatever streaming platform it's going to be on, after it's off, then people are going to be like, wow, that show was really good.
Yeah. I
one of
agree.
those shows that later people are going to find, like The Killing, for example, was a show like that. And Breaking Bad to a certain degree, even though it did catch fire at the very end. But I think it's just going to be one of those shows. And their other show, Black Sails, really caught on literally after the show was over.
I know.
I get so many. I don't know if this is the same thing for you, Yardley, but I get so many people who just watch Black Sails, and they're like, dude, have you heard of this show called Black Sails? And I'm laughing, right? Yeah. So this might be one of those things. But going back to the second season, they do need another showrunner. Just because I think this showrunner, they don't have it. And who is the third showrunner? Do you know? It's somebody, right? It's somebody pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I have it in my notes, and I don't have my notes right here with me. It's not somebody super well known, but it's somebody well known enough behind the scenes that there's maybe some light there. But again,
sorry for my rant.
No, I agree with you too. I really do. Although I have to say, in Black Sails' defense, the UK only just saw the last season, so maybe that's why. I don't know.
Well, and then they didn't really promote it either, too. Though they didn't promote Black Sails really.
You're right, and actually, it's weird.
But they put a lot of money in it. That was so bizarre to me. They did promote it, but they put a lot of money into it, though.
Okay, but I think that the financial backing for Black Sails is a little bit different than American Gods, because Black Sails had Michael Bay as executive producers. There were big names attached to it. So I think the finances came in attached to the big names. Neil Gaiman is a big name in writing, but other than Coraline, done by Tim Burton and a couple of others, it's a little bit harder to sort of envision Neil Gaiman as, oh yeah, look, this is insta success, so throw your money over here. And I think that might be why there was a bit of hesitation. The main thing though is I with Stars, right? If Stars wants to make a show successful, they have the tools. Billions is everywhere. It is on every IMDb page. It is all kinds of everywhere. I get emails in my box from Stars asking me, hey, what do you think about this? And American Gods is nowhere to be found. So again, if Stars wanted this to be successful, they could direction, and they don't. Now, I'm not a Stars executive. I don't know what the heck they're thinking. I think the only thing that I can say for it, though, is there's so much potential to the story that to fault the instance right now about where they are on what the story could have been is sort of short-sighted, because it's clearly a really well-told, excellent story that just needs a creative backing, and that takes money. It's not like you don't get creativity of that caliber for free. And for all the other reasons we just talked about why it is so difficult to adapt work, about why some of Neil Gaiman's, especially his more philosophical ideas, are hard to translate visually, that's why you have to pay the big boys, or the big girls, I should say. This is what you need. You have to have this, and it just feels so disingenuous for anybody really at this point to look at American Gods and go, yeah, it's not really all that great in season 2 because they just kind of. No, this really is a Stars failure in my opinion. So anyway, end of my rant, I suppose. Does anybody have anything else that they want to throw in there?
No, I think I got it off the chest.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, so let's sort of go back to let's talk just a bit first about the Mad Sweeney experience, right? As you know, like I said at the beginning, he really didn't have much role in the book. So everything that we see pretty much about the Mad Sweeney narrative is made up. And I feel like they did a really good job. And what did you guys think about the Mad Sweeney backstory, which is so interesting because if you go back and you watch A Prayer for Mad Sweeney, and then back to back watch Treasure of the Sun, wow, you get some pretty interesting dynamics going, which are really different, and so they're pretty compelling. So what did you guys think about the whole backstory elements?
No, I thought that I actually thought that it was pretty cool for them to dig a little bit deeper into his backstory. And it's actually, I saw something that was mentioning that the way that they laid it out was based off of something that happened in real life or something like that. Did you do any research into that? It was like another folklore tale or something, but I think it was based off of, something kind of similarly happening in real life. I thought it was pretty cool to kind of see that he had a curse put on him. I felt sorry for his wife and kid, for him not. I mean, you should have listened to your wife, bro. You know what I mean? But outside of that part being kind of depressing about how they were living in squalor, based off of certain decisions, I thought that sucked. But it was kind of cool to know that he actually was a king and he really did have a horde, so to speak. And I thought that some of the visuals, I mean, I think they had about maybe a 60-second stint of a battle. And I liked how that battle was shot. I mean, I can really appreciate that character. We've discussed this on the show. He was one of my favorite characters on the show. I thought that this episode was needed. I just wish we would have gotten it like 3 episodes ago.
Right.
What did you think, Kente?
No, I agree. I mean, it was a terrific story. Great acting by him, Pablo. And you know, if I didn't already know it, if I didn't know that it was going to be spoiled, I mean, if I didn't know from being spoiled, I would have probably assumed he was dying. Just by the way everything shook out. And one thing I liked in this was I thought it was a great episode for Shadow too. I thought I liked his acting in it as well. And in the final fight scene was great. It was very well done, very well choreographed, and ain't nothing like getting a spear shoved up in you as a way to go out.
So just so you know, in the book, Mad Sweeney is basically found by Shadow under said bridge, dead from exposure in the elements. So at least in some way, he got a little bit of a resurrected story. Kind of interesting. What did you think about Mad Sweeney's decision at the very end to teleport the spear into the horde?
Yeah, I think that's something that probably anybody who felt like they was wronged by somebody else would wish that they could do, because the lead up to all of this, we knew that spear, was important. So of course you're left thinking, well, what is Wednesday gonna do now? But I almost feel like, good for him, just why not just kind of throw a hiccup, in everything that happens. And this is a true death, right? Because he was killed. Well,
he was killed by the spear.
Yeah, he was killed by the spear. Is it when we talk about the deaths and what kills gods? Another god can kill another god. Do you think that plays into anything with Shadow? Because I think you posed a question last week if Shadow was a god, and I'm wondering, maybe it's because he was holding the spear, and there's obviously more to his story. But good for Mad Sweeney, but I think bad for the rest of the series that he's gone.
Yeah, well, okay, so some interesting, which is one of the reasons I think that this particular season was as interesting as it was. We saw a couple of ways that gods can be resurrected, which is why I used the word earlier. We saw that there are all kinds of sacrifices that people give, that strange things happen. Oh God. Okay, so now I really am going to struggle with the character's name. Who was our multi-eyed
Raven?
the multi-eyed raven, not the three-eyed raven. Who was the character that was connecting all of our technology? Who had many eyes, and that Laura killed? Nobody remembers. It was he's from Greek mythology. Argus. His name is Argus. That's what it is. Okay. So Argus, we know, basically Wednesday sets up the whole scenario by all the ways that Argus could probably come back. We saw media sort of reborn. I don't think we've seen the end of Technology Boy. I feel like there's a lot still sort of in limbo, but Mad Sweeney, honestly, I feel like in this iteration we have seen the last of him. I don't know about the character itself as having any kind of other substantial power in the story, but that just may be because I can't see it beyond the fact that I know that even in the book he dies, and it just doesn't, there isn't a whole lot of story bandwidth for him to have now at this point. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that there is a place for him?
You broke up a little bit. Just say the last few seconds.
Do you think that there's a place for Mad Sweeney in the story that's still left? Like,
going
if
forward?
they were going to, yeah.
Well, I think that whatever extension of his story that there is going to have to be played out through Laura Moon's end. I feel like there has to be reverberations of what happened in this episode later on. But I don't know if it's felt in the following episode, or is it going to be something that's going to happen in season 3? I hope they follow up and show us, what what happens out of this, because I just have a feeling season 3 is probably going to be so much different. Like both of these seasons have kind of been different. I think that season 3, I have even less faith that you know what I mean, that they're going to try to be cohesive. I don't know. So I hope that something is felt from what happened in episode 8. But do you know what the episode 8 title is, or has that been dropped yet?
Yeah, it is entitled. I should know it by heart, but it is entitled Moon Shadow.
Oh, okay. All right.
Which is what, who calls Shadow Moon that?
Right?
Who? Was it Mad Sweeney that called him that? Somebody called him Moon Shadow.
I don't think it was Mad Sweeney, but I do. You don't think that it was Anansi?
No, I don't know. No, he's usually pretty careful to call him Shadow Moon. Huh.
Well,
I don't remember, but somebody does.
Yeah.
And that seems okay. So the well, anyway, I guess I won't get into that because I don't really number one, in a lot of shows I feel like I can make all kinds of predictive ideas and throw them out into the universe and see what sticks, because that's what's exciting. And with this show, first, I guess because the source material feels like it deserves a little bit of respect, but secondly, because I feel like this is just not the kind of speculation that I'm able to make, because they don't give me enough clues. Honestly, I hate to say it this way because I don't mean to. I swear to God, I don't mean to sound like I'm trying to be some kind of elitist critic. But when I can't get the story clues out of something, I don't know how anybody else can either. I say that with all sincerity. I mean, I really, really pay attention. I take notes. I'm dedicated to the stories that I watch. And when I start not finding the threads to pull to make things make sense, or see the visual clues that I need to get the whole of the story together, or when they're haphazard and not told in a proper fashion, that's a big warning sign to me. And so I don't even know if I want to make a prediction about what is sort of in store for next week. The only thing I can say is I think that it will be the tinder that may have been sort of kindling a little with the death that we saw earliest in the season, I think is nothing compared to what we will see at the end of the season, because something has to ignite this to the point that they are ready to actually. I don't see that yet. Do you guys?
No, I don't. And do either of you feel like, well, we know the next episode is Moon Shadow. I think it's going to be a Shadow and Laura centric episode next week. I definitely hope so. Because, I think that a lot of these characters have been paired up with everybody else under the sun, and they haven't really had an outing where it was just them two. So at least in the last episode, I hope we get that. And as far as what goes on in our in the Facebook group, has anybody kind of floated the idea that Laura's gonna just so happen to show up and see Mad Sweeney bleeding and think that there's something there and try to get some of his blood for the potion? Has anybody been saying anything along that?
No, nobody. I have to say that after what happened this episode, I didn't even want to float the idea that I had about it because it felt so just genuinely wrong.
Yeah, I do. And how did y'all feel about the literal ending when he was saying, I was once a king? I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this somewhere. This is nothing but, Hodor without the seizure. Like, well, what the hell is it?
Okay, so and I wish that we had a lot more time to talk about this, but I'm just going to briefly try to develop sort of the concise idea about what was happening here. So I feel like what was happening, because, and again, I said go back and watch A Prayer for Mad Sweeney first, because it really does give you a lot of contextual clues about what is going on here. And I think that the idea here is it's not just that he's the Mad King. I feel like it's actually Mr. Wednesday that caused him to basically go crazy, first of all. But secondly, that there is something connected. Oh, that was the other thing, of course. Mr. Wednesday died, and we saw his head chopped off. So we know that gods have some kind of strange power. Right? Okay, well, in any event, the overall arc that I got out of this last episode was for Mad Sweeney, that he not only didn't he know what story, quote unquote, was correct and which reality was his reality, but I don't think we were supposed to know that either. I mean, I think that that the fiction, it came down to what Mr. Ibis said sitting behind the desk, that it isn't the reality that's important, it's the stories that are around you that matter. And I in a strange way, I felt like that was sort of the entire pivot point of the entire episode, that this is basically what it's all about. You create your own reality by telling your own stories. And that, to me, that seemed fairly powerful. What did you guys think?
Yeah, no, it's very good. And what a great point when it comes to what you're talking about. I think that the thing that I know you mentioned earlier in the episode that had we thought of Mr. Wednesday differently based on what we've seen in this last episode, and I think both of our answers were the same, right? No, that he's pretty much, been consistent all along. I just feel like the thing that's different is Shadow is the way that Shadow sees Mr. Wednesday now.
Right.
That is evolved. Now, Yardley made a point to say that probably what's going to end up happening, he's going to just keep following Mr. Wednesday almost like a lap dog. But my hope is at some point he is going to evolve, and Mr. Wednesday is going to, I'm sorry, not Mr. Wednesday, but Shadow is going to change his, I mean, I hope it is not the very end of the show when he finally gets it, but he just, at some point his evolution as a character has to change, and no longer, keep on the path.
Well, spoiler alert to everyone, Mad Sweeney points out in no uncertain terms what is going to happen to Shadow. And I won't say what it is, but I will say that it is 100% contained in this episode. What is about to happen to Shadow is 100% spoken by Mad Sweeney to Shadow. And that creates the biggest arc moment in Shadow's character, at least in terms of the book, and I suspect in the series as well. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Yardley.
No, I mean, I agree with what both of you said. And also one of the reasons why I think that Shadow is also bound to Mr. Wednesday is something that doesn't really have anything to do with the gods or any otherworldliness. It's the fact he's an ex-felon and Mr. Wednesday is paying him. He just doesn't have. So he's stuck.
He says he's got nothing. I mean, he says it. He basically says you've got nothing. And I agree. I do totally agree.
Has there been enough stuff this season with Laura Moon? Because I think the pairing has, of course, been Laura and Mad Sweeney. But would an episode that's heavy on Shadow and Laura Moon be enough for either of you, seeing as we've gotten so little of those characters all season? Do you think that they can make up for that absence in the season finale?
I feel like the answer is yes, if they did it properly. But I feel like the answer is no, based on what I've seen so far in this transitional series, the season for the series. It doesn't feel like they have enough power behind what they well, I shouldn't say that. I guess I'm a little bit torn because there have been episode moments, whole episodes that have felt more powerful than the first season, but they were told in such disconnected fashion that it's hard to sort of put it all together in the American Gods story pantheon, if you will, because it just doesn't feel like they have the kind of power behind them. And so I don't know if telling the Laura Shadow story would make up for all the lost time that they have basically now kind of given the, and also that they've given them. They've just been so much time apart to sort of develop on their own. It's hard to, although, you know, I have to say it doesn't take much in terms of story, dialogue, visual cues, all kinds of stuff to come together and make stuff work with a little bit of story magic. So I think it's possible. I just find it improbable.
Yeah.
Is that what you think, Kente?
No, yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I feel like in this finale, one is I would like to see those two characters get together, or have more of a time with each other, because we haven't really seen that since the first episode of the season, and that was very short. So, right. So I mean, I guess they could make up for it, and they need to. They really need to, and they have to give us something to be excited about for a third season.
So on that note, I unfortunately we're going to run out of time and we're going to have to go. But I just want to get from both you and Yardley one thing that you want to see in this next episode.
I want to about. I want pretty much Shadow Moon and Laura to kind of throw the gauntlet down, and I just want to know really what he feels about her. I think we all know that he doesn't really love her, especially based off of, you know, how he found out what happened or whatever. But I want to take it all. I want to take the blood that she needs for the serum to come back to life. I want them to be able to take it off the table if it's going to be Shadow. You know what I mean? So if it's not Shadow who she's going to get the blood from, it's going to. I have to lean towards my little theory of once she loves herself, she can apply her own blood to it. But I really do want there to be some definition, you know, just something that's showing where their relationship is, because it doesn't really feel like they have had any type of relationship since she's been undead. So for me, I just need a great episode with those two. I want to figure out everything that's going on with them feelings wise, because at least that'll make it a little bit more clear going into season 3. Outside of that, I don't even know. I mean, honestly, do y'all think that we'll even get any Mr. Nancy, any of those people, or do you think they're gonna pretty much just kind of shoehorn and you know, go straight ahead with Shadow only?
I don't know. I feel like I don't have a prediction.
I think we're gonna get Real Quiz, Mr. Nancy. We're gonna get I'm sorry, how do you say his name? The
Mr. Ebis.
Mr. Ebis, and probably, well, of course, Mr. World. We're gonna get Mr. World as well.
Oh yeah, and new media. I feel like I feel like that's definitely got to be part of the next episode. We got to figure out where the new gods are.
Right.
Media is a character that grew on me and grew off me just as quickly. Like, I don't even like the character anymore. But so bless her heart. I hope they have to do more with her. But are y'all? I mean, well, I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited for the last episode. I just think that they really have to give us more information on the character that's allegedly the lead of the show, which is Shadow. But I mean, for me, this show's all about Mr. Wednesday, to be honest with you. The television show in the second season is definitely all about Mr. Wednesday.
Right. Yeah. I agree. It's all about how does everybody see Mr. Wednesday. Although Shadow had some pretty good character arc moments, so I'll give him that for sure. Well, maybe for next week, I just throw it out there. Maybe for next week, what we can do is have just a little bit of extra time, and we can really sort of decompress where things have come, and based on what we get out of the season finale, where we think things are going, and kind of put together a bit of a list for what we would like to see, what we wish we had seen, that kind of stuff for our next season. So I hope that becomes a reality. If not, then I'll have to just be bugging other people about it. And y'all don't want that. I know you don't. The people around me really appreciate the fact that I podcast, because it means I'm not talking to them about it. So, okay. So tell us how we can get you on social media, Kinte.
You can get me at Kinte F on Twitter, and then you can also go to the website indyradio.org, indyradio.org.
And Yardley, how can people find you in and across the internet?
You can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker.
All right. And you can find me on Twitter at followingbliss1, or you can hop over to my websites at moviesmakethemeal.com or criticallaughs.com. So until next time, I will bid you all aloha.